connected. Hi, everyone. As you're starting to join the room, just wanted to welcome you. We're just going to give a couple more minutes for participants to join, and then we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Thank you.
Can you all hear my husband in the next room?
Yeah.
Just a tiny bit.
You won't hear him when I'm talking over him. I'll talk real loud, and I'll stay muted until we get to my part.
Well, I am going to go ahead and get started. My name is Robin Akpora. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I work in Yale's Office of Career Strategy, and I am the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Public Service Careers. I'm very involved with an initiative from our office called Common Good and Creative Careers, which essentially works towards making sure that students like all of you who are interested in areas like legal services, nonprofit, government, education, and the arts are aware of all the resources and the services that we provide. So we are very excited today to have both Emily Galvin Almanza and Mick, I want to make sure I say this right, Kligler?
Nailed it.
With Partners for Justice. Emily, actually, we were just talking about it. Emily came 2 years ago to our Yale Common Good and Creative Career Fair. I think it was in the fall. And, you know, a lot of students were interested in hearing about Partners for Justice. We were so excited to have her there. So we really appreciate you coming back, Emily, and Nick for joining. And I am now going to turn things over to the two of you to talk to students about Partners for Justice.
Thank you so much, Robin. And yes, I remember it well. I had a great time talking with everyone at Yale. I always love being able to drive up into that beautiful, beautiful place. And I also was put at a table next to some kind of law enforcement agency, and I didn't get into a fist fight with them. And when I lost my glasses, it was the FBI. The FBI helped me find my glasses, which was just so unusual for me. Anyway, thank you so much. I know this is a session really for you all to ask questions. But Mick is one of our amazing advocates. They work in New Orleans. We've prepped just like 7 slides, like a mini deck that will help us walk through just some like basic things about the program, and then we'll open it up for lots and lots of awesome questions. I am helpless though. Mick must share the slides.
Yeah, I got you.
Great.
1 second. Cool. Can y'all see that?
Yep, looks great. So this is about Partners for Justice, and we're gonna dig into what Partners for Justice is, how we work, how we operate, what we do. But let's start first. This is a direct service program. This is a program where our participants are empowered to work one-on-one with people who are facing the criminal legal system, who are ensnared in the criminal legal system, and who are also facing the fallout from that, right? Which can be incredibly challenging. One arrest can ruin an entire life as things unravel and spiral out. And I think the best way to actually explain this is through a client story. So I've asked Mick to share one of their client stories within the bounds of confidentiality, of course, totally anonymized in a respectful, client-safe way. Mick, do you mind talking about your case?
Yeah, sure. So this is a real client story, totally anonymized, as Emily said. We're going to call her Miss Jennifer. This is absolutely not Miss Jennifer. This is a stock photo off the internet. So, but if you need a picture in your head. So Miss Jennifer is a client of mine that I've been working with for quite a while now. She's a 39-year-old trans woman who is homeless, HIV positive, has multiple mental health diagnoses, a long struggle with heroin addiction, and was arrested last year for sort of a medium level offense related to an altercation she got into when just walking down the street. So when I first got on this case, basically how it works is the attorney makes a referral to one of us advocates, and I got on the case, and the first issue that was going on was that this client was in jail. She was being held in the men's facility in Orleans Parish and was not receiving her HIV medications or her hormones. And so the first thing I did on this case was doing what we call medical advocacy. So basically reaching out to jail staff, trying to make sure that she got her HIV medications, explaining why hormones are medically necessary for trans folks, trying to advocate for her to be switched to a different tier in the jail so she wouldn't be harassed for her gender presentation, etc. Not so long after I got the case originally, COVID hit, and that of course has changed our work in so many ways, one of which was we actually had the opportunity to get a lot of our clients out of jail because at least those of them who were medically at risk, we could make the argument that jail was an even more unsafe place for them to be than it usually is. So we were able to, the attorney asked me to get medical records demonstrating that Ms. Jennifer was HIV positive. So I got those records, we presented them to the court, and we were able to get her bonded out on a lower bond. So then a few days after she bonds out, she calls me and says, Mick, I got jumped last night. They took all of my warm clothing. I'm freezing, and I also want to go to treatment. I'm ready to deal with this addiction. So I was able to access, our office has a client welfare fund where we're able to sort of, and also Partners for Justice does as well, and we're able to sort of help clients with minor expenses. So we got her some warm clothing, and then we got her into a detox facility. She did really well there. And then after she had detoxed about a week or so later, she called me again and said, look, Mick, this discharge planner is trying to transfer me to this inpatient residential treatment facility for a month. It's way up in northern Louisiana. They won't let me have my makeup or a razor or anything I need there. I don't want to go. And so then I very quickly, last minute, reached out to this other rehab facility in New Orleans that we work with quite often, was able to confirm that they would house her with other women, that they would allow her to have a razor, things that she needed. Made a very last minute referral to that rehab facility, called up the detox, spoke to the discharge planner, said, look, my client, thank you for your work. We've got it from here. She doesn't want to go to this one. We're gonna move her elsewhere. So then the client goes, Miss Jennifer goes to this rehab facility, does really well there, is there for about a month. And while she's there, we're able to get her connected to a housing organization in New Orleans called House of Tulip, which provides permanent housing for trans folks in New Orleans. So then when she graduates from the rehab facility, goes to this place, House of Tulip, and is there now. So sober, stably housed, applying for jobs, has access to medical care and mental health care. And so when I sort of reported back to the attorney with all this information about where she's at now, how well she's doing, the attorney was like, okay, well, look, maybe we can use this to get her a better deal. So then basically I was able to put together what we call a mitigation report, which is kind of presenting a holistic picture of our clients to the courts, to the prosecution, and to the judge, to sort of insist that they see our clients as more than just names attached to a charge. So I was able to write a letter sort of explaining her life narrative, who she is, and how well she's doing now, all these services that we've been able to connect her to. And that actually worked, and we got her charges reduced, and now we're sort of in the plea sentencing part of the situation, but we're hopeful that we're going to have a pretty good outcome in this situation. So all of that to say is I bring this story up in particular because it speaks to really the breadth of things that we're asked to do and do as advocates, from in-jail support of our clients to getting medical records, to connecting them to drug treatment, mental health treatment, housing, doing other sorts of advocacy like mitigation work, and really just trying to make sure our clients have access to the basic fundamentals that they need, like warm clothing, shelter, medical care, etc. So that is there's a lot of pieces to that case, but it was one of the ones that has luckily had a fairly good outcome. So that's great. And I also want to emphasize that the real hero of this story is obviously Miss Jennifer, and that our role as client advocates is really to support our clients and leverage what access and power we have to connect our clients to the resources and support systems they need to fight for themselves and their own freedom and their own dignity. I'm going to toss it back to Emily to talk sort of about how this program works.
I love that. Because, okay, so what Mick and Miss Jennifer's story lets me say now is that this is a program about saying yes. When a person gets entangled with the criminal legal system, and let's be real about who we're talking about, low-income people, primarily Black and brown people, who are disproportionately harmed by a system that is structurally and oppressively racist. When people are entangled with that system, the fallout to their life is massive. It can take away your future, your education, your job, your housing, your family unity. I mean, every aspect of someone's life can be harmed by contact with this system. And usually when people are navigating that system, they're told, no, I'm your criminal defense lawyer. I can't help you with your eviction case. Sorry, I don't know how to do that. No, this treatment program doesn't accept people of your status, qualifications, et cetera. No, you need insurance to do that. No, we can't help you get your license. Sorry, you're barred from getting a license now that you have this conviction. I mean, it's just like a world of no. This program was designed to empower advocates to say yes, thus empowering public defenders to say yes. Public defenders access 20% of the low-income population in any given jurisdiction, and it tends to be the chunk of the population that most needs resources in order to retain their stability, economic mobility, self-determination. So what we do is we recruit a diverse group of, we call them new professionals or early career professionals. You don't have to be young. We try not to say young people. You could be graduating from college at any age, but we ask that our advocates be starting out in their professional lives, eager to do work that is really radically meaningful and working one-on-one with actual people. This is not policy work. It's not media work. It is what Mick just described, which is like doing phenomenal things for real humans. We ask that advocates commit 2 years to the program. Essentially because people only really get good at the job close to a year in, and we want to give our clients a lot of time with their advocate to make sure the advocates are providing phenomenal service. But during that time, we do a lot. We kick off with a big training to make sure everyone is conversant in like the basic toolkit they need to do this work. It's a retreat to build skills, build knowledge. That training remains ongoing throughout your entire time as an advocate. We train once a month as a group nationally. We do a lot of individual local trainings. Every site has a regional director who is the sort of coach for the advocate team in that site, who's tasked with their ongoing learning, support, being a spaced event, sounding board. And also we do a lot of professional development. That's why we're recruiting new professionals, because the idea is this program should be a bridge to whatever the future you want is. That could mean if you want to be a public defender, we will pay for your LSAT prep, and we will like get you networked with, you know, mentors in your field who are exciting to you, and like help liaise with admissions professionals to try to smooth the path, write amazing letters of rec, like get people into whatever grad school they want to go. If you want to be a journalist, we will find journalists for you to talk to. Same kind of networking there. So the idea is this program gives incredible work experience that launches advocates into being the next generation of public service leaders. I'm a former public defender myself. I'm super sick of prosecutors being like the ruling class in our political world. And I would really like to create a next generation of public defense rooted leaders. So I'm hoping that is you all. Every advocate is embedded with a public defender at one of our sites. So right now, our sites are Oakland, California, Wilmington, Delaware, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Houston, Texas. We're opening new sites this year in Yolo County, California, which is near UC Davis, a tribal land in Montana. We are recruiting tribal affiliates for the Montana roles. Miami-Dade public defenders. We're actually expanding to Southern Delaware as well this year. And there may be, pending a couple of grants, there may be opportunities in Los Angeles and Philadelphia as well. So it's a lot of opportunities this year. It's super cool. I think we can actually go to the next slide, because I've now talked your ear off about all of the 2 years of coaching and training. Nick, we should collab on the values, because I think that the values sort of speak for themselves, but sort of don't. What's your favorite value on this list?
Definitely client-centered. Yeah, I mean, I think that is really the most vital one with regards to public defense work and our work as advocates specifically. Really important to let the clients, I think the court system is the legal system in general is designed to disempower people and use language that is really hard to understand. And I think our role as advocates is really to return as much power as possible to our clients and let them make their own decisions with regards to their case, with regards to their housing. With, I think in this story about Miss Jennifer, one of the things I was proudest about was that she felt comfortable reaching out to me to say, hey, look, this service provider is trying to send me to a rehab facility in which I'm not going to feel safe. Like, can we do anything about it? And then just, recognizing that people are experts in their own experience and really know what's best for them and what they need. And so if we listen and do our best to connect them to what it is they need, then those are going to be the best outcomes.
Yeah, Mick, I want to flag something else in your story too, because I don't know if you all noticed, but in that story, Mick, you were not telling Miss Jennifer, like, hey, it's time for you to go to treatment. Like, it's, you got to get into inpatient. Let's go. Let's do this. Mick waited until Miss Jennifer was ready. Miss Jennifer called Nick and said, hey, I'm ready to go into treatment. Will you help me? And that's when Mick took action. We follow our clients' leads. You heard, I don't even need to go into the tenaciousness, because the tenaciousness of Mick's story, I sometimes describe as advocates as being like the kind of people who are willing to like do a sit-in at the DMV until the bureaucrat behind the desk like gives them what they want. But I think that kind of following our clients, working for people, not on people, is really, really, really important to us. We are not prescriptive. We are not the Department of Probation. We're not trying to fix anybody. We are meeting people where they are and trying to get people what they want. That's part of the inclusivity. And I think it also goes to caring, but on caring, I really want to emphasize that this is a hard job. It is emotionally difficult. It is mentally difficult. It's challenging intellectually as well as emotionally. And I think caring for ourselves, caring for each other, being generous with ourselves in the same way that we are generous with our clients is a really, really important value. I also want to touch on transformative because we are, I think at this point, we are an out abolitionist organization, which is tricky because we are working within the system we want to dismantle. Our perspective is that every time we go into a room and humanize our clients, every time Mick tells Miss Jennifer's story in a way that makes a judge who might not understand the life of a trans woman in a facility, might not be obvious to that judge, but every time Mick tells that story in a way that humanizes her and helps the judge feel her position and understand what she's going through, we have chipped away at the anesthetizing and dehumanizing impact of this system. And every time we pull someone out of a cage, every time we are able to eliminate days in jail, get a non-incarceratory outcome, get a case dismissed, we are diminishing the impact of the system. So yes, the day-to-day work is a form of harm reduction, but our long-term vision is that our humanizing, our storytelling, and our elimination of days in jail, our presentation of, dignified alternatives to the criminal system will erode the criminal system. Our long-term vision is a world where we don't use trauma as a way of responding to transgression. Next slide. We got to get to questions. We're going to blast through. Yes. These kind of speak for themselves. Like, I think we kind of touched on a lot of these. Comfortable with uncertainty is an important one because our clients, sometimes people talk about this work as like, my client was innocent and I fought for my innocent client. And like, not all of our clients are innocent. Sometimes our clients have caused harm. And dealing with that ambiguity and trying to understand how we can help someone not engage in harm and harmful behavior in a way that is still client-centered, client-led, dignified, and inclusive, that's really hard. So you got to be comfortable with the gray areas. If you are a moral absolutist, this is not the job for you.
Unless you're a moral absolutist with regards to the fact that no one should be in jail.
There we go. You can be morally absolutely against human caging. That's perfect. There's one other thing on the slide I just want to highlight, which is, this is not an issue in this room, but if you are talking to friends in your circles, we do generally look for people who have a BA. However, what we're looking for really is wonderful writing, oral advocacy, the ability to be persuasive, to have a command of narrative. That can be found in people who don't actually complete their BA, but that's a sort of equivalent level of skill we're looking for. So I wanted to flag that aspect of inclusivity as well.
Next one.
Yeah, let's do it. I think we're almost to the questions part. The argument for why you should want this job. I think I've hit on the professional development help we give. I would also say that one thing I think this job gives is an ability to walk into any room and not be afraid to fight for someone, even if that someone is yourself, to be able to take on things you are not familiar with, learn them quickly, and feel confident engaging with them. This job will make you fearless, I think, or at least able to work even when you are afraid. Mick, what do you think? You've done this job for a long time. I'm interested in what you think is useful to take from this. What skills are you going to walk away with?
I think, a lot of definitely a much deeper understanding of the criminal legal system, the way it works, and the ways that we can most effectively try to interrupt it. I think one of the things I've been most grateful for from PFJ, in addition, just really excellent sort of continued education opportunities in terms of trainings. And I feel like I keep getting better at my job, not only because I'm gaining experience, but also because I keep having trainings that make me think more carefully about the ways in which I do things or the approach that I'm taking to a certain question. Like, for instance, the ways that mental health treatment facilities can also be punitive and carceral or how to most effectively de-escalate a situation or things like that. I think really what I'm most grateful for, though, is the community of advocates, of people, just like really smart, dedicated people across the country who are care a lot about figuring out how to best protect the rights of our clients, and also how to kind of vision bigger picture what the future of community accountability is, what we want it to look like, I think that's just really valuable to be able to have like community in both like an interpersonal and a professional way. We have one thing I love right now is that we have this abolition affinity reading group that meets once a month, where we do sort of—
That's not mandatory. That's just a thing you can opt into.
Yeah, definitely not mandatory. Not mandatory. But anyway, it has allowed me to sort of, while I'm doing this very like sort of detail focused micro work of like trying to dig clients out of these horrible situations, it has allowed me to simultaneously be talking to really smart people about how to make sure we're doing that work in a way that is oriented towards transformation and transforming this system away from what it is into something that resembles a justice system. So.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, actually, because I wanted to touch on the fact that this is a new, the abolition affinity group meetings, the reading group, that's a new thing. But this is a really new program, and we consider ourselves collaboratively created with our advocates. Does that mean the advocates are in charge of creating the program? No. Tasked with doing everything? No. But what it means is, in many of these offices where we practice, it's the first time they've ever had a non-attorney advocate. They are learning how to think holistically. The advocates are modeling holistic client-centered behavior. The advocates are influencing attorney culture. The advocates are slowly but surely changing the offices in which they work and changing the spaces in which they work. And they're changing us as well. You know, we sent out our first pilot class in 2018. We've learned a ton. We got a ton of feedback from our pilot class on like what worked and what didn't, and we are evolving all the time. Building in new forms of support, finding new resources. So if you are someone who thinks that sounds exhausting, don't do this. But if you are someone who thinks it's cool to build something new and take on the challenge of trying to use your work and your beliefs to change the culture around you, like, this could be cool. So
I'm gonna move us along.
Yeah. We got, the application is easy. Robin told me that I should mention this. It's like 3 questions. You are not expected to write an essay. Like, a paragraph is cool. 2 paragraphs are cool. I would say that if you are interested in applying for this job, I would encourage you to not be afraid of being honest with us. One of the questions we ask tends to be about having, when have you ever made a mistake and had to fix it, or something really, a real failure you've had to overcome. That's not a trick question. We're not like, your failure should not be like, I'm too much of a perfectionist. And you could talk about real failure, and we're like into that. We're totally into real challenges, real failures. We're not being sneaky. We really want to know the things we asked about. So we're very excited to answer your questions. You could probably put down the slides, I guess.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Share. Great.
I want to take a look at the chat. All right. Yes, a placement preference. Of course. We don't want to put anybody in a geography they don't want to be in. Generally, we ask advocates to tell us where they want to be, where they will not go. And if there's like a few places where they want to be, to indicate like order of preference. We really urge people to be honest. There is no point in trying to make yourself more likely to get a spot by saying you'll go to 6 different places, and then when you actually get an offer in one of those places, not wanting to go there. not functional, don't do it. Be straight with us. If you do not want to go to a place, don't tell us you're into going. Don't tell us you're willing to go to that place. But yes, you can tell us where you want to go. And we're also happy to talk through like we're you know, the salary, the benefits package, the HR details of all the different sites. We're happy to connect advocates with advocates already working in those sites to learn about culture. The housing stipend. So we do have we have a needs-based translocation stipend. It's like a moving, like basically anyone who applied for certain forms of federal aid based on income can get our assistance in being able to move to the jurisdiction in which you would like to serve. We're flexible about it. We try to create bridge funding too when the public defender's office like doesn't pay their first paycheck for like a month or something. We're small and flexible and like to offer people help. Language preferences. Spanish is obviously a really big deal. It is not mandatory, but it's so helpful. But Vietnamese is great. Chinese is great. Nick, what are language needs in New Orleans?
Mostly Spanish, Vietnamese, occasionally French. But yeah, definitely Spanish and Vietnamese down here. I would imagine
Spanish and Vietnamese, a lot of places, and Chinese in some places. Yeah. Advocate Alumni Network. Mick, have you connected with, I mean, yes, we're small, so we only have a number of alums, but they are strong and they are into us. So
and we just
tell us about that.
And so Partners for Justice just started a mentorship program. So everybody who wants to be is paired with a Partners for Justice alum to talk about the job, the future, kind of whatever comes up in a mentor-mentee relationship. So yeah, I have a mentor who's awesome. They completed the program last year and are now in law school. And yeah, we chat about all sorts of things, from like how to stay emotionally well doing this work, and what I want to do next, how they came to decide to go to law school, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, which it's really helpful to have someone a few years ahead to sort of bounce things off of.
I'm very glad that's working well. It's again a new thing. Advocates said they wanted, we knew we were going to have a strong alumni network once we started like graduating alums, but we wanted to figure out how best to integrate the alums into our current team. And this was advocate feedback, and it's working really, really well. I'm telling you, someday our alums are going to be running the world. So it's good to get in with them now. International students, the structure of our program is unique. We place advocates into host public defender offices. For the most part, our host defenders cannot sponsor a visa. So it is more challenging if you don't have work authorization. We do have, if you do have work authorization, if you are a DACA recipient, for example, like by all means apply. But most of our offices cannot sponsor work visas. How many applicants are accepted each year? Such a great question, because we're growing so fast that it varies a lot. It depends on how many spots we have. So it's not a set number. I should know this math off the top of my head. Hold on. Mick, do you know how? Let me count. I think we've got 2 spots in Delaware. So it's in Montana, YOLO. We're bringing on at probably between, and this is a little uncertain because like I said, there's a couple grants pending that could create many, many, many more spots. So it'll be between like 15 spots and possibly as many as 35 spots.
Yeah, and then we have one in the Q&A box that says how many advocates are selected for each location, which is similarly, it varies. So in New Orleans, there are 3 of us. In Houston, I can keep track. There's like 5 or 6 or something.
Yeah, but nobody's leaving in New Orleans. So there's no spots in New Orleans right now for this. We're going to have 2 in Miami. We're going to have 2 spots in Southern Delaware. We're going to have 2 spots on the Flathead Reservation in Montana, 2 spots in Yolo County, 4 spots in Houston. And then if Los Angeles happens, it could be between 6 and 12 spots. And if Philadelphia happens, it will be around 4 or 5 spots. We don't place any advocates alone. That is a hard and fast rule. Nobody's ever alone. The pandemic question. So it varies. America has like 3,000 counties, and every county does criminal law differently. So some of our teams are remote. Some of our teams are hybrid, remote, in person, a few days a week. We will be doing our retreats, our training program remotely this year, for everyone's safety and comfort. We expect advocates to relocate to their host site, especially because even if they are not in person in the manner of, fully going to court or going to jails, there may be some in-person HR stuff with the office or other needs. We also don't know when in-person practice will become fully safe. So since it could kind of happen at any time, we want people to be prepared to be there. Mick, how's New Orleans right now? Are you you're quasi in person?
We're still mostly entirely remote. So the office is opened at a very limited capacity. We're only supposed to go in 1 day a week maximum. And then we are still going to do jail visits, which are at the moment all non-contact over a video screen. So that's kind of where we're at now. We are on we're on the next tier of vaccine. So I expect that at least here, probably by the summer, we'll be more in person, back in the office.
Yeah, our California team's already vaccinated. I would say it's the jail visits thing. I think if you've never worked this job, that sounds like a bad thing, having to go to the jail. But if you've ever tried to deal with a video visit to a jail, being able to go in person is often so much easier, and you get to see your client, which is amazing and
yeah,
awesome.
No, it can be really hard to tell how someone's doing when you can only see like the top right corner of their face.
Yeah. Oh, God. Video visits are so bad. Rolling admissions. Not really. Some years we do a fall interviewing cycle, but right now it's really just, we're going to be filling our 2021 slate this spring. There's always the possibility that an office could pop up that we want to bring a team to in the fall, and you know about it, but it's not our normal practice. I'm so glad someone asked the salary question. We actually just did a review of our salaries based on cost of living in all jurisdictions. We pay at or above a living wage in all jurisdictions. The salary does vary because it costs something really different to live in Baton Rouge than it does in Miami, than it does in Oakland. Generally, the salaries are determined by the host office. Generally, they range from $36,000 a year in extremely low cost of living sites up to, I think our highest paid is $42,000, but we're going to do a bonus to top that off, to make the cost of living. That's for Oakland. I don't know of anyone. I don't think we've ever had an advocate take a second job. I think the biggest thing advocates have done to make it feasible is having roommates. Yeah, I know people who have chosen to go to school during the advocate program because they were like super eager to get a social work degree. And I'm not sure that I would never work that hard, but some people want to. So, but no, I have not heard of anyone working a second job to pay rent. The work week or weekly schedule. Mick, walk us through your weekly schedule.
Oh my God. Well, okay, yeah. So definitely part of the nature of the job is that you have to be very adaptable. It's case management means that you have basically a caseload of, I would say, I don't know, between at any given time, between 30 and 40 clients, I would say. And so depending on where each case is at, whether it's you have a court date, whether someone's incarcerated or out of custody, you're sort of juggling a lot of different things on any given day, in any given week. So I would say a typical week, I have like meetings with attorneys set up to talk about clients, to sort of strategize about our case strategy, and I have probably maybe 2 days of the week that I block out a few hours to go to jail and visit my clients that are in custody. I will have, right now I do all of my client contact for the most part with out of custody clients over the phone. So I'll have phone calls set up with clients. And then definitely I block out time to do more like kind of the backside admin stuff of keeping up with case notes and doing records requests and referrals to treatment for clients. And so I would say it varies a lot. I think this is true for most advocates, maybe especially true for me, which is that I pretty much structure my entire schedule. There are certain like department meetings or all office meetings that I obviously have to be at, but other than that, I check in with my supervisor once or twice a week. But really, it's on me to structure my schedule based on the things I have to get done. So yeah, I would say the answer to that is that it varies a lot. There's a lot of like, it's good for folks that like an independent work style because you really get to structure your own schedule and prioritize tasks. And I would say that's what I've got on that one.
I think one of the things I want to flag is that it's like really self-determined. Mick has a caseload. They're in charge of their schedule. They do what they want to do for their clients at the time they want to do it. Like some of it is determined by like, oh, I've got to be in court at this hour for this hearing. But a lot of it is like, I choose, I'm groggy in the morning. So I'm going to do like really slow tasks in the morning. And I'm going to do more like rapid client interaction in the afternoon. People have a lot of control over how they want to set themselves up. I thank you for flagging the Q&A. I'm going to quickly go through the sites again. Miami, Southern Delaware, the Flathead Reservation in Montana, Yolo County, California, Houston, Texas, and possibly Los Angeles or Philadelphia. What do PFJ advocates typically do after their 2 years at PFJ? So I think about half go to law school, about half. The other half are thinking of things like social work, like journalism, community organizing is a big one. I think that's like the biggest. Some people just want to travel for a year, but she was going to law school after that, so I'm going to count that as law school. Mick, I can't think of. Really, that's the norm. Is like some sort of change-making position, some kind of grad school. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. I'm definitely thinking about getting a master's in social work, but I'm also considering not doing that and looking for other jobs in criminal justice reform or transformative justice or thinking my latest idea was art therapy. So I don't know. They keep coming. Every day is different, but yeah, I think a wide variety of kind of after graduation tracks.
Yeah. Generally, our goal is to support people in anything they want to do. We had one advocate who said, I am emotionally exhausted and I would like to work for the post office for 6 months. And we said, cool. But then we want to talk about what you want to do after that because you're amazing and have so much change-making potential.
Yeah. Also, shout out to postal workers. They're awesome.
Yeah, totally. Like what a time to be she chose to do that right before the election, which is wild. That's a form of change-making.
Yeah.
Okay. So advocates in each location. Some sites are bigger than others. Houston, we're selecting 4 positions for a team of 8 advocates. It's a big site, lots of community. Yolo, Miami, Montana will all be teams of 2. The Delaware advocates will be slotting into our existing team of 4 advocates, so they'll be augmenting it. It will go from being a team of 4 to being a team of 6. If Los Angeles comes on, like I said, it would be 6 to 12. Philly would be 4 to 5. I don't want to speak for Mick. My impression is that the advocate teams are very communal and have very strong bonds, friendships, codependent, working, co-supporting relationships. Is that right, Mick?
Yeah, I would say so. The nature of the job is that inevitably like 5 different crises pop up in a week and you need to cover for your coworker and then they cover for you and you're like, can someone do this jail visit for me? And so I think like both in terms of the actual work, there's a very collaborative collectivism spirit. And then also in terms of, I think generally speaking, advocates get pretty close to the advocates that they work with just because the job is pretty emotionally intense and it can be really helpful to be able to talk about your work, what's going on with people that really get it and are going through the same stuff, are also like kind of in the trenches. So yeah, I would say yes to that.
Focus on a certain area. In Miami, the focus will be very heavily on juvenile clients. So we will be training people on juvenile neurodevelopment. I mean, if somebody has a pre-existing, you know, if you're a neurobio major and like really into talking about why kid brains don't make great decisions, that's awesome. But generally, advocates are generalists. They are working more robustly with a wider variety of community members. There are immigration issues in all of our offices. If what you want is to be working with immigrant communities, like that is everybody. Certain offices have more capacity. I think our Southern Delaware office is probably going to be an interesting challenge because I know there's a large immigrant community in Southern Delaware. And I think that the resources available to immigrant communities in Delaware are poor. And we're working to augment those resources and find new people we can cajole into working with us to expand access to counsel in Delaware.
Yeah, I would add to that I think because both PFJ is pretty new and also like the role in our public defender partner offices is often pretty new. I think there's a lot of room for if you do have a particular area of interest. For instance, before this job, I worked with adults with developmental disabilities. And so I sort of came into this job with that framework of thinking particularly about that population and the way that they are caught up in the criminal justice system. And so I had a few conversations with my supervisor about that. And I now get almost all of the referrals for clients with developmental disabilities, which is an area that I particularly care about. And so I think there's room for sort of pseudo informally specializing with something that you are interested in.
We find that happens really naturally, but then we also want to make sure everybody gets a nice variety of experience. So it's a constant balance of like, we know this person is really, really good at child support payment modification, but we do not want to drown them in child support payment modification. So like maybe they can lead a training with the rest of their team on how to, be a resource, but not be exclusively doing that. There are two issues in the Q&A I really want to address. One is, do you have to be an abolitionist to take this job? No, we are not all abolitionists. There's no kind of mandate. I think we want to make it clear that we believe in transformation. If you think that the criminal legal system is working really well right now, this is probably not the job for you. But if you want to get people out of cages and you want to preserve their ability to walk away from the system as unscathed as possible, if you want to fight for someone's future, this is a good job, regardless of what you think systemically. This is not a policy job. It is not a job to work on, large scale systemic issues from a policy perspective. It is totally a direct service job. So if you were just in it to like bring people home to their families and help them find a job and like get a license back, cool. That totally works.
Yeah, I do think this speaks to another question that I think is really important in the Q&A, is that like, I do think it's fundamentally important that everybody doing this work acknowledge that this is a system that is racist and classist. And like that is just, if that's not where you're at, then definitely I would say don't get into this work at this time.
You will not have a good time. So I'm really glad the race question is being raised too. So we're, like I said, we're constantly evolving. Right now, what our training looks like is we do an entire chapter of our initial training program on navigating race in this context. Like obviously the impact of the system on our clients is like really hard to miss. It's very obvious. It is a racist, oppressive system. But how to navigate it as a person of color and how to navigate it as a white person are actually really different experiences. I think there are a lot of additional burdens on advocates of color because it is just fundamentally harder to engage with a system that is this oppressive if you are a person whose lived experience intersects with that oppression. And I also think that for our advocates who are white, there's a whole bunch of learning to do we talk about accompliceship rather than allyship, because allyship is kind of passive, but accompliceship, you are like really in it and you are doing things to advance our shared agenda. So we do trainings on accompliceship. We do trainings, the usual sort of I hate calling it like a diversity, equity, inclusion training. It really goes beyond that. It's like, a real afternoon spent on the racial issues at play in this system. It's also ongoing. We have affinity groups for advocates of color. We also have affinity groups for white advocates who want to be better accomplices. I think that's really the scope of our training right now. We are also in the process of ensuring that all of our host offices have robust DEI practices, and learning more about what they do for their attorneys, because attorney culture, like our PFJ culture, is sometimes very different from the attorney culture in the office. And working on attorney culture and helping offices transform the culture of their staff in a way that advances social justice is really important to us. And I'd be interested in hearing from Sophia about whether that answered, I'm going to make an assumption, answered her question or not. I'm happy to talk more on it. In terms of the public health, everybody is doing public health work. There is no advocate who is not at some point navigating substance use treatment, mental health treatment, getting medical records. Generally, there's social work staff in each office, so you're not tasked with interpreting medical records or making diagnoses, but treatment support, wrongful charges and hospital bills, access to healthcare for undocumented and uninsured people. That is happening at every single site all the time. So there is no need to be location specific for that subject matter.
Yeah, I see one about, I read your bio that you applied to this program through AmeriCorps. Yeah, so I have actually been at this job this is my first year with PFJ, but my second year in this position. So I was actually already a client advocate in the Orleans Public Defender's Office when I applied to work with Partners for Justice. And I was, before I was a Partners for Justice fellow, I was on an AmeriCorps fellowship. Yeah, I'm not sure what specifically you'd like me to speak to. Can
I clarify that that's really non-traditional, and I want to make a point about how awesome Mick is in doing so. So we are not an AmeriCorps affiliated program. AmeriCorps pays people way less than we would ever be willing to.
Yeah, that was going to be my main. That was going to be my main point. Is that Partners for Justice is a much better employer because I make a living wage and have access to training.
Mick landed this job through a non-traditional route. The vast majority of people that we select through this exact process. We present at colleges, they apply, we interview, they are selected for the program. Mick happened to be already doing the work. And when we set forth to fill these New Orleans positions, we were approached by a group of public defenders in New Orleans who said, have you talked to Mick? Mick's amazing, you have to talk to them. And we interviewed Mick in the same process as everybody else, and Mick landed the job. But I want to make it clear that that's not there's not some secret backroom thing happening that people aren't aware. This is Mick is unique. So you don't have to do AmeriCorps first. You don't have to already be doing this job, and you actually don't have to have prior criminal justice experience. You don't have to be a pre-law major. Mick, your mentor is Margot, right?
Yeah.
Their major was neuroscience and visual art. And they remain one of my all-time favorite advocates. Don't tell anyone I said that.
Great.
You have to come into this with the ability to be creative, to problem solve, to do the kind of thing you would do to take care of your friend or your family member. You don't have to come into this job being a baby lawyer. That is not necessary at all. We want creative problem solvers much more than we want legal encyclopedias. So back to the Q&A, more about the ongoing trainings. So our trainings are heavily influenced by our advocates' requests. So for example, tomorrow we have a training. Mick, here's a reminder for you. We have a training tomorrow from Aaron Morrison, who's an amazing journalist with the AP. He focuses on race and justice. And he's going to be giving us training on narrative, on how we can deepen our descriptive abilities and be more persuasive storytellers. Especially when talking about stories of disenfranchisement, of trauma, of hardship. So I think some of our other recent trainings, we did a wellness workshop lately. We're not always that woo-woo, but I understand it went very well. We were doing trainings on how to react to a client who's threatening self-harm. We're doing training on what's happening with licensure, fines and fees abuse, and sort of the criminalization of poverty in America. It's really, we surveyed advocates on what their interests were. We're also keeping a close eye on what's happening in our jurisdictions. So for example, in Texas, we just heard they really want training on how to prep a client for a child protective services investigation. And what do we tell clients to help parents put their best foot forward and try to keep their kids at home. And we are bringing in a trainer to talk about that. We're going to probably do a Texas specific training and then a national training because everybody probably could benefit from knowing more about that. The Abolitionist Reading Group, like I said, not mandatory, just an outside work thing that we're doing because we love it. But one of our regional directors, Ashley Payne, has put together a phenomenal list of readings, all available online. I think I ordered the Angela Davis book, Our Prison's Obsolete, just because I wanted to have it. But we're reading and meeting once a month to talk about what we read.
Yeah, and the trainings are typically one afternoon every 2 weeks, right? It's
technically I think one a month. It's on your calendar every 2 weeks in case we need to do some sort of admin stuff during the other. But it's usually once a month.
Just a quick question on the trainings, if you don't mind. Were those for the national ones with all the advocates? Were those was that prior to the pandemic? Was that something where you were all like zooming in and doing it that way? Or
yeah, because our teams are so distributed, we can't really do a national training. We used to do retreats in person. I will say as this program grows, we will probably, if we do in-person retreats, it'll probably shift to a regional because once we have like 500 advocates spread out across all these geographies, having everyone in one place will be very challenging. But our Zoom trainings are not obnoxious. Mick, I give you leave to be frank. But, we knew we were going to have to do pandemic Zoom training for our retreat. And we worked really hard to understand more about how humans can learn from screens. We tried to cap everything at like discrete periods of time with big breaks in between. There were a lot of watch ahead or read ahead materials so that people were never like on Zoom all day. I hope we try to make it really interactive, use a lot of breakout groups, funky things like that.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say as Zoom trainings go, they tend to be lively and engaging.
Thanks, Mick. That was a kindness. Advocates will get interviewed in April. The process is going to be, we're probably going to have the advocates themselves screen the first pool of applicants, and then they will be interviewed by our national team, and then we make decisions shortly thereafter. We should have decisions by, if we're interviewing in April, mid-April, I think end of April, early May will be when decisions are made. How do we hope? So I'm going to answer this question real fast. If you don't get in, yes, you should apply again because we've actually had advocates whose absolute tenacity has got them into the program. Fitting in the broader picture of fixing the criminal legal system, addressing systemic issues. We believe that when we tell people stories in a way that honors their own experience, that platforms and amplifies the lived experience of our clients, we are forcing every decision maker in the room, judges, prosecutors, people who are usually totally anesthetized against thinking about the human impact of their work. We are forcing them to encounter the human impact of their work. For that reason, we are really effective at getting people out of jail. On average, when we do what Mick referred to as mitigation in a case, or we talk about why a person should get out, should get another chance, we save each mitigation client on average 6 months behind bars. Because when you tell someone's human story well and you come up with a plan for how they can succeed and you present that, you're much more likely to get that person out of the system. I know that that's not systemic work. We're not working on, transforming systems from a policy perspective. We are getting people out one at a time. However, as we do that, we believe that this work begins to chip away at the dehumanizing machinery of the system. We are raising awareness, we're coordinating with our clients. We are making our offices more community rooted. We are helping amplify, we're actually collaborating in a lot of jurisdictions with participatory defense hubs to try and raise the community's political power to make change in the jurisdictions in which they work. So by raising up our communities, by amplifying their voices, we believe that we will shift the culture of the system, that will make it harder for the system to continue in its current dehumanizing manner. And we also filter information to actual policy and legislation groups all the time. Like if somebody's like, hey, we're working on dog bite cases in Delaware, our police dogs biting people, we're like, yeah, here's 6 clients. Please talk to these 6 people. And we don't do the policy work ourselves, but we love to collaborate. Margot, actually, Mick's mentor, became like one of the foremost experts in Delaware on the criminalization of poverty in their spare time. So yeah, I think that it is direct service work, but it is direct service work in a collaborative way toward the larger goal. I hope that was, please post in the chat if that was not enough of an answer. Advocates do get benefits. They get benefits commensurate with the employees of the host office, usually like health, dental, vision, paid time off. Usually not, if we work in a state agency and the state employees have pensions, we usually can't get access to their pensions, but we do have detailed benefits application or information available for every applicant. Cool. I think it is 4:59.
That was impressive, you two. Getting to all those questions. I think there was just one more, this is just a comment. Someone mentioned that her dad used to work at CPS in Houston.
There you go. Amazing. Maybe we'll bring your dad in for a training. Although I think I think sometimes if you're inside CPS, it's hard to know what parents should do to put, I think it can be hard to give the parent perspective because you know what you're looking for as CPS, and we want to know what parents need to do to look good. So that's really interesting though. I'd love to think more about that.
Well, I know we're at time, but Emily and Mick, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I'm really glad we allowed, it was a great call to allow that much time for Q&A because clearly a lot of people are excited. A lot of people had questions, and that's the priority, right? To get their questions answered. So I want to thank you both for your time. I want to thank everybody who joined us today and for all of your great questions. They've mentioned the deadline in late March. You can obviously go to their website for more information. And just thank you for the work you're doing. I think this is so exciting. Obviously, it's a very new organization. And I think your answers show just like the energy and Nick, hearing how it is from the advocate perspective is just so helpful. So thank you.
Great. I'm so glad.
Thank you all for having us. We really appreciate it. I hope you all apply. Everybody, just pile in here. Let's go.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care.
Take care.